maybe might help you, right? Sometimes when you can sculpt a face, you can then figure out how to draw a face. There's a little bit of correlation there. So get yourself a piece of paper, get set. Okay, hopefully your fingers aren't too dirty because I'm going to make you touch your face. I know, gross. Gross. Acne, I don't want you to get pimples. I mean, if you do, you can wear those cute little star stickers. Okay.
Spooky ones at TJ Maxx.
Spooky, like little pumpkins?
They're like little pumpkins and ghosts.
That's cute. All right. Back to the point. Okay, so ideally you did a sketch with your sketches. I think everybody did it. So you maybe have your sketches in your sketchbook in mind. But ideally we're also thinking about the surface we have in front of us. Now, when you did your sketch, did you anticipate how big and the end shape that you have? Did it kind of deviate a little bit? Okay, so let's, right on the corner of our page, let's kind of give ourselves a rough estimate of what we have versus what we initially planned. Because ceramics is kind of, sometimes you're like, I'm going to make this, it's going to look like this, and then it doesn't. Happens all the time. Happens all the time. Go ahead and make yourself a little, just a loose outline, little contour bad boy of like what you ended up with versus what your initial plan was. Now some of you might have nailed it, which if you did, good job. But it's okay if you did it because, you know, nobody's perfect. And Montana said it was okay, so we're going to just let that be what it is. So I've got a ruler here. If you've got a ruler, it might be helpful. I had rulers. They used to all be hanging up there. They have traveled somewhere, so I'll have to find them. But ideally, we're going to take some measurements. So if initially your face was sort of right smack dab in the middle, think about your shape now. Where would be the logical space to build your face, right? My guess is the space that has the most volume, right? So that way you have places for like eyes and cheeks and mouth. So kind of like give yourself a little bit of an outline of like, this is where I'm gonna build the face. Because if you were to start to draw a face, you would kind of do like an egg shape like this, and you'd have, you know, your structure lines of where your eyes go, where your nose ends. Like this is a pretty standard face, like start to draw a face build. If you've ever attempted to draw a face, chances are you've done something like this. But let's fit it to the space we have. So if you have an oblong shape, consider the shape you have. Now I've got this kind of weird space, so I'm gonna adjust my general plan. So I'm gonna put my face here, and I'm gonna kind of make that same space that I have on my general egg shape. I'm gonna try to put it in the space here, just like eyes, bottom of nose, middle of mouth, right? So a fun fact about faces is while everybody has a different face, because when we think about people, we always have to assume generalizations, not like solid laws, because we're all built differently, right? You can typically break every face into threes. So if you take your little pincher fingers right here, pop one right here where the middle of your pupil will tend to sit. You'll get, and take it to the edge of your face, get that measurement, right? Pull it back, line it up with your pupil to pupil, pupil to edge. So that's the same, it's about the same from this way to this way to this way. So typically, for proportion's sake, I can kind of break this into threes. So I'm gonna get rid of that middle line. I don't need it. If I break it into threes, I'll have a more equally distributed space. Now that same little measurement from the middle of your pupil to the edge of your face, guess what? If I turn it this way, I have forehead to top of bridge, I have bridge to bottom of nose, I have bottom of nose to top of chin. So I can go 3, 3, 3. Now it's going to always be a generalization because we always have different face shapes, but we can get pretty close, right? So the thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to just break this into a 3x3 grid. So that standard face structure space, like this is okay. This is going to be better. This is going to be better because what I can sort of line up is This is gonna be where the pupils live. This is the bottom of my nose. This is where my chin starts. So everywhere in between, I have things, right? And if I line up the middle of my pupil, it'll typically meet the corner of my mouth, right? Typically, we always say, always generalizations, never absolutes, especially with faces. So this would be my middle mouth line. I can get these numbers pretty easily. So this is my basis. This is what I'm gonna start with. And I'm gonna take that same thing that I've just done here, and I'm gonna try to apply it with a needle tool, just very lightly, to my space here. So I'm gonna just do my very best and kind of give myself that same outline. And I kind of make mine look like the label that would come on a bottle like this. Like that's kind of what I was thinking with my overall guess of space. Don't dig too deep, just kind of get a nice surface etch. And if I feel like I need to go up a little higher, I can just, like an eraser, smooth it over. I don't want to go too deep at this point right now. This is just surface level planning. And get generalization. So once I've got that, I'm going to take my ruler, and just like before, I'm going to get a little measurement. Well, conveniently, this is 9 inches long. Good job, JC. So 9, 6, 3, 6, 9. I've got the marks all the way down. Let me go ahead and break this from here. Now this one across is about 6, so I'm going to go 2, 4, 6. I'm going to come back down to this edge. I have 7.5 here. So I would probably pull my calculator out, but I'm going to just guesstimate here. And if I can line it up with here, it'll be about right. 2, 4, 6, and I've got a little bit more room on here. And then I'm going to very lightly just pull my grid work into my space. You use your ruler, you get a straight line, right? That's why we love a ruler. So you should have a little bit of a grid work, a 3x3 grid. Rule of thirds is one of the solid art rules across the board on all mediums. We use it in drawing, we use it in photography, we use it in ceramics. All right, never fails. So once I've got that, I'm going to sort of start to give myself some general estimates of what things are going to go where. So if I've got right here, this is my middle line for my mouth. I'm going to just sort of put my nose there, put my eyeballs here. And I'm just going to do my best. It doesn't have to be perfect. And here's the thing, if you've got somebody that's kind of goofy looking, like maybe you drew a goofy looking guy, move outside of those grid lines, right? Make him goofy looking. If he is a goofy looking guy, make him a goofy looking guy. So this is my mouth line. All right. So
Must we do the lines, or can we just get funky with it?
you can just get funky with it, but if you want it to be proportionate, this is how we get proportionate, right? So I'm going to play a little bit with this. The thing about goofy looking guys is they are rarely proportionate. And we were trying to make some exaggerations here. So before I fully get in on this space, I'm going to just try to outline the general expression that I want to make. So if we think about faces, let me clean here. I want my guy to be kind of angry. So one of my fine understandings of anger is typically when people make angry faces like this, they have diagonal eyebrows, yes? So I'm going to make sure those diagonal eyebrows kind of are here. And then I'm going to think about the buildup of skin when you furrow your brow because you're mad, right? So I'm going to furrow that brow skin. So I want you to think more about skin in this way. It's a skin thought, I know, wild. And if you bring it close, that means you're going to have a narrowed eye. If you think about closing your eyes in anger, how close is the top of your cheek to the top of your brow? If you're squinting, these things come forward, so I'm going to really, really embellish them So at this point, I've got an eyeball here, an eyeball here, and we're gonna have a wrinkly nose because I'm mad, and my nostrils are flared. So think about the face you're gonna be making, and I want you to kind of make that face with your face and just check, right? Like do a little touch test. Because we're building with our hands, not with our eyes in this space. So if you can kind of feel what the volume feels like, you'll get a better understanding. So everything kind of goes up at an angle when I'm angry. So I'm gonna follow the parallel lines of my eyebrows and match my nose, right? And then I'm gonna sort of, this line right here is gonna match this line right there. So I've got this sort of angry boy. And he's gonna have a butt chin because I like a butt chin. That's a personal preference, right? And then we consider our lines. So this is the face I'm sort of shooting for. That's my visual goal. Let's think about this more fully. Within the anatomy of a face, we kind of have some things that you as a person may be aware of and may not be aware of. If you've ever been like really like, I'm gonna get good at faces, you've probably thought about these things, but if it's never occurred to you, let's think about them. So faces are like geography. What do I mean by that, guys? Does anybody have a guess?
There's layers.
Well, yeah, there are layers, but what else? Elevation, 100%. Because if I were to just build this nice and flat and carve it in, well, I'm not going to have that like dimension. When we think about a face, you have the forehead, and you have this dip down for the eye, and you have this build up for the nose, and then you have another dip down, and then you have lip, chin, and a dip down for the bottom of the chin. So if I were to not like tell you that's a face, what does that look like? A mountain range, almost. And ideally when you're building, you're not just looking straight down, you're looking from the side. What's the elevation coming to? So consider the spaces that come up and come down. Okay, your forehead's pretty flat mostly, unless you've got like a round one or a wide one. But does your nose go straight down, or does it come back into your skull? Usually comes back in. So what I have people try to do is try to like draw the angles of things, right? Things that go back into space, things that come out. And the things that I want you to remember while you're building, and the important things are your mustache lines. Do not neglect your mustache space. You say, JC, my mustache space. Well, this is your mustache space. And the definition between the top of your mouth and where your cheekies live gives you your expression. If you ignore this space and make it flat, you will have no expression. But if you build up, push and pull, don't ignore your mustache line. Secondarily, does anybody know what this part right here on your mouth is called? It is called the philtrum. Do you know why it's there? Do we know what it's for? It's the seam of your mouth, right? It's where your palate comes together. If you have a cleft palate, like your missing part, that's where they have to pull it together, right? So that's also an important place because it defines the shape of your lip. If you have a small, narrow one, you might probably have a pointy lip. If you have a wide, flat one, you'll probably have a rounder lip. So that space is very important. It's one of those ones that we forget. This space right here between your nose and your brow is important. It's one of those places we forget. We have to remember that things go back into space, right? 3D, we're in sculpture now. So let's get to building. I'm gonna build this with some pretty wet clay. I'm gonna squeeze it so you can see how wet this is. Now I'm building it wet, and I'm gonna make sure my piece is wet so that way I do not have to do too much scoring. What I am doing is a lot of smoothing in. If I give it attention, it'll hold, especially when it's real. My clay is really, really sticky, right? If you want to build with me, build with me. If you want to just watch, let's just watch. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to acknowledge important height areas. I'm going to start with the nose is the highest point of your face. If I were to lay you on your side, the nose is the tallest mountain. So how do I start the nose? Well, anybody watch Sesame Street?
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah, hell yeah. A Bert and Ernie nose is very important. So I'm gonna go ahead and look at my reference that I've drawn here. I need to make sure I have a little bit of space. I'm gonna just very lightly with my scoring rib kind of pull out the general broad shape that I'm shooting for. And I'm gonna sort of make sure I've kind of got an idea of those flared nostrils. Then I'm gonna sort of make that with a lug of clay, So I'm gonna pop that down. So the tools I have in front of me are my wooden knife. I have my rib. I have these things now. If I am here, you are welcome to borrow mine. These are my rubber brushes. These are for fine details, right? I've got a really narrow one. I've got a broader one with kind of like a wedge tip. And I've got this funky wooden tool that's got a nice narrow point that I like. So I've got it on here. Did I do anything? No. I'm going to take my metal rib, and I'm going to start to pull it into this space to create that rounder nose shape. I'm going to pull it here, pull, 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 pull. Pull, 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 pull. Now it's not perfect. I need it to be a little bit wider. So I'm going to, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to add some more material. I'm going to pull it and put it under here. My Bert and Ernie nose, it should look like a hot dog initially. But as it dries, just like when we did with our coils, we clean up, right? So what do we know about a nose? Usually it has a little ball here on the tip. You have a septum. You have nostrils. All of these are different for different faces. So consider what kind of septum you have that's going to inform what your nose is going to look like. If I turn it this way, that's what my guy's nose currently looks like. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start to design and define that septum. I'm going to take this guy, and all I'm doing, see if I can kind of, well, shoot, let's see. Boom, like that. What I'm doing, this is difficult, man. I need many cameras. I'm never going to be an influencer. I'm just going to start to define that space there. All I'm doing is shoving my nose-sized hole into the space, creating my septum and my nostril base, right? Notice I'm working on the foam, and I'm able to sort of like have a little bit more flexibility with like how I maneuver this thing, because the foam is catching the pressure. If I were to try to do this on the table, what would happen is my pieces would start to smush down. So before I move forward, I'm going to smooth this down into this space, and then I want to consider like what my sketch kind of looks like and how those nostrils tend to move. Now they're up. They're up and they're flared, so I'm going to just pull this down like so, like that. Pull it up, pull it up. And at this point, just like with anything, don't worry about perfection. Come back for perfection. Right now, let's get the foundation together. So you can kind of see I've got that flared situation happening. And what I'm going to tell you, this is my advice, because this is what I tell my drawing kids too. Don't worry about the eyes right now. Don't worry about the eyes. We always get like, I've got to put the eyes in. If you do the eyes first, you're going to get stuck there. And what's going to happen is you're going to have like one right eye that's perfect. And the left one looks like garbage, right? That's the way it works. So right now we're on noses. Let's also go ahead and do cheekies. I'm moving fast, guys. Fast, fast, fast. This is like a gesture drawing, essentially. We want fast, sort of emotive movements. For my cheekies, I just have two little balls. I want them relatively around the same size. I'm going to pop those right here. These are my apples. My apples, my apples. So if I'm mad, I'm going to make the face and check. They're going to go this way, right? And just like previous, I'm going to just go ahead and pull that down into the space. Try not to lose my nose. Pull that material up into the nose. Make it part of the space. Pull it down, pull it down. And I'll even take my finger, so percussion here, but instead of like a full tool, I'm just using the flat side of my finger to kind of get that volume, right? Everybody wants to start with mouth and eyes, but that's kind of those are the finishers. We don't care about them right now, because all of your emotions live in the skin around those places, not inside of those things, right? If you think about when you make faces, where do the faces happen? Are they in your mouth, or are they in your cheeks? Are they in your eye bags? Are they in your forehead? So I'm going to go ahead and just jump to forehead. I've got another blob of clay about that big. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pop up here, give them a real Cro-Magnon caveman brow, right? But remember, it goes in right here in your bridge. So I'm going to pull down, come this way. This will help me define the space for my eyes, right? I'm coming up. I'm just using my thumbs this way, and I'm starting to create those hollows. Now, if you're doing a skull, you might, instead of building the space, you might take some wet thumbs and like slowly push those crevices in. Because if you think about your skull is just a bunch of holes. So a skull would look like this. And you have like where the bone ends, don't worry about the cartilage, like that would be your nose. And so your end result would sort of look like that, right? Because you don't have all that extra material to make face, you just have bone. And when you're thinking about building faces, especially realistic faces, if you want a beautiful face, consider the skull. Be thinking about the skull all the time. Because you don't just pop the eye right on flat. You got to build a hole for it to live in. Because if you think about the eyeballs in your head, your eyeballs live in a big old hole, right? So that's what I'm doing. I'm building a hole. I'm building a hole. Rather than digging a hole, I'm building a hole, because we don't want to destroy the integrity of our bottle. So it's kind of coming together. If I were to put him up sideways, I want you to see the perspective, right? It's getting there. I'm building this fast. I've done this a million times. The more you, just like anything, the more you do it, practice makes perfect. The first face might not be the best face. Maybe you do it again. Before I move forward, I want to make this sort of like under eye space. So I'm going to roll out a coil about that fat. And I'm going to consider the shape I've made here. It's not a flat shape. It's not a curved shape. It's an upside down shape, right? It's an upside down hill. So I'm going to pull that here into this space. Start to pull my cheekies up into that space I just made, right? Do it again on the other side. Don't just linger on the left or the right. Do a little bit of both. Work in tandem. Do some for the left and go do it again for the right. Then I'm going to take my little thumbs and I'll pull my cheekies up. Because if I'm mad, my face is really squinched. And what I'm going to do now is take from the corners of my nose, I'm going to push in a little bit and start to define that mustache area. So you can kind of see, you can feel that anger kind of happening. The bigger you make those expressions feel, the more clear they're going to read. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start smoothing my cheekies into that mustache space. Smoothing those cheekies into that mustache space. All right. Now he's not a happy boy. He's a sad boy. I'm not going to start with my top lip. I'm actually going to start with my bottom lip. Make sure I get that, a nice old frown here. And I'm going to smooth that down because the top part of it's going to protrude. And if I can create that volume, that space, fake the realism, I'll be better off. All right. So I'm going to make my top lip now, and here's where it gets a little complicated. I'm going to roll this one out a little thinner, create that space. But right here, I need to make that philtrum, because if I don't make the philtrum, it'll feel weird. So So I'm gonna take the rounded side of my tool here, my thumb side, and I'm just gonna pull it through, right? And then I'm gonna pull this up into my mustache space. Look at him, grumpy guy. Pull these things together. I'm gonna come back through with those thumbs from the corner of my nose. So if you think about the corner of your mustache space, it comes from the corner of your nostrils to the corner of your mouth, right? You smile, you frown, these two things move, these two things create dimension. And I'm not worried about that upper lip right now, but later, what I'm instead of making Angelina Jolie lips, which are very easy to do, but none of us, well, maybe some of us have them. Some of us might be blessed. I am not blessed. I have a thin upper lip, which is, you know, it's fine. I'm okay with it. I'm gonna come and sort of like give that like top lip dimension that I sort of showed earlier when I did the side profile here. Mouths kind of do this thing where they go in and they go out. And this space right here is very important. It's what gives the reel, right? So I'm gonna just take my tool and sort of just pull this way in an upward fashion. And because I have my philtrum there, the top of my lip should start to come together, right? Kind of give it something. And come through with my space. Now, I'm gonna build this up nice and wet, and I'm gonna come back later once it's a little drier, and I'm gonna give it more detail. The secret's in the wrinkles, the secret's in the fat. Fat in your face, wrinkles in your face are what feel real, right? We're not quite done yet though. I'm gonna grab another coil, like so, like that. I'm gonna break that bad boy in half, and I'm gonna create the other side of my eye socket. So I'm gonna pull this in here and start to create the holes for my eyes. All right, and then pull those back into the side of my jug here. I still haven't made my eyes yet. That's okay though. We'll come back to it. But he reads a little grumpy, yeah? And the more I tighten, the more I push these things together, the more dimension I give it. I'm gonna come back to my mustache area. You readdress, you come back, you move forward, you come back. You move forward, you come back. Come back, come back, come back. Pull it forward, push it in, do the other side. Pull it forward. And if you remember from our video, Jim, he built his faces very quickly, right? They were kind of really rough sketches. Now notice I've lost my nostrils. Well, let's pull them back. Let's pull them back. Get rid of them, pull them back. Always a balancing act of moving and pulling, moving and pulling. Push, pull, push, pull. So I'm gonna worry about his brow now. I'm gonna paddle it down a little bit. We gotta have angry eyebrows, right? So that means diagonal. I'm gonna grab some coils. I've already got it rolling a little bit with that middle of his brow, but I'm gonna just some real fat hot dog eyebrows here. All right, pull it down, push it in, pull it back. So at this point, I have a pretty solid structure. It kind of looks like the Sorting Hat from Harry Potter, ever so slightly. I'm going to come back in and just kind of bring his brows together. Let me see if I can scooch this where it's a little bit more visible. There we go. Bring his brows up into the top here. And then I'm going to give him a little bit of a motion. And I'm going to just create me a defining line here where they start to furrow ever so slightly. So if I were to paddle it back, it looks a bit like that. I'm gonna readjust my nose, add some more material. Come back, push, pull, push, pull. It's all about that. Push and pull here. And consider your nose. Do you have a ball nose? Do you have a pointed nose? What kind of nose did you draw? Typically, you secretly draw your own nose because it's the nose you're most familiar with. So I'm just coming through. I'm going to keep building up. I haven't even worried about the eyes, but now I'm going to sort of work again on that under eye space. Come back. And notice all I'm doing is adding material. I'm not taking anything out. Next class period, when it's set up, I'm going to do some reduction. Right now we are in addition space. Almost exclusively. Come through. Okay, almost there. Gotta throw his chin on. Throw the sides of his mustache area back, because I lost it, but I'm gonna get it back. Pull it closer to the corners of his mouth. I need a little more material. I'm gonna pop his chin right there. Chin, 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 chin. Pull that down, pull it up into the bottom of his lip. If you think about when you're angry, your chin comes up because you're squunching your face together. And I'm gonna give him his little butt so I can remember what that looks like. I like a butt chin. I think butt chins are cute. And I need to pull back some cheekies. The cheekies are important. You say, JC, we're adults. You don't have to call them cheekies. I want to. Don't tell me how to be. Coming through. Okay. Now the secret, right? Eyeballs. You said eyeballs. We're not ready for eyeballs. I'm going to smooth down a little bit. I'm taking my rib once I've got a lot of the materials, and I'm very lightly compressing this top surface so I get a little bit more smoothness happening. Pull, pull, pull. Pull, pull, pull. Up. Keeping those same directional guidelines pretty present. Come up. Through, pull back. All of this work right now is to really just make sure it is nicely incorporated into my bottle, but it's not going to pull itself off because I didn't do any scoring, did I? You say, JC, but whenever we put two pieces of clay together, we always score. Yes, and. If the clay is very sticky, no. Sticky clay will hold on real good. If it is like leather hard to leather hard, yes, always. We want to match like to like. So I'm going to continue sort of adding that dimension. Get close, pull back, push forward, pull back, push forward. Notice I still haven't done the eyes. People get stuck in the eyes, so I always save it for last. That should be your last thing, because I'm building up all this surface area, so that way when I go to add the eyes, it's not going to be a massive endeavor. So now I have a pretty good cavity, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and pull this into like sort of a cavity hole type space. Pull it forward. Okay. Eyeballs. Your eyeballs are bigger than you think they are. So I'm going to take a ball of clay. I'm going to roll it into a ball. This is what I've got right now. I want enough that it sort of sits really comfortably, nice and squishy in the space, not rolling around, not too much coming out. The top of your eye should be relatively level with your bridge. So I'm going to do that again. I'm going to push it into the edge here. Got another ball of clay about that big. That's the cavity size I've made. I want it to hug comfortably under my brow and above my cheekbone. Right? So here is the tricky part. I'm going to grab my smoothing tool and I'm going to create the little like apex, this part right here, because your eyes go back in and then they come out. So your eyes should make sort of like an in and out shape. So you should have an eyelid, but here where it comes in, this goes back into space. So this part right here should not be at level with this part right here. The top of your eye should be the highest point. So I'm going to take this here and I'm going to push it back into my nose. That volume I've created with the bridge, I'm going to feed it right into that bridge corner. So typically the bridge is also where your eyes come back into space. We're going to also pull it back into this part of your skull. Pull it back, pull it back. Right? Pull it back, pull it back. Pull it down. So you should have, it should kind of look like a closed-eyed person at this point. Right? Take your wooden knife and define that upper brow area. It's going to be very important that you start to like really delineate. Now what I'm going to do, now that I've done that, is I'm going to pull a little bit of this material down and start to create eyelids, essentially, from that one ball of clay. So I've got it here, and I'm pulling it down, and I'm creating eyelids. Now, you're going to spend some time here, spend a little time here. Okay. All right, let's make our eyelids. You're going to roll out another coil, this one a little bit thinner. You're going to have one that sort of bridges from the apex on the top. Make sure you're following your brow line. So if you're restful and your brows are low, your top eyelid should be low. If you're angry and you're scrunched, this and this should match. So whatever you have happening here in the brow, make sure that top lid is going to mimic it. Right? So once I get that on there, I'm going to pull this back and start to thin out this space, because your eyelid shouldn't be super thick, but you should have a sort of dimensional like shadow happening between your eyeball and your eyelid. Pull it down this way. Do that on both eyes. Do that on both eyes. Your top lid should mimic your top brow. Okay, almost there, almost there. You gotta do a bottom lid now. Another coil. This one's also, especially if you're angry, should mimic that top brow, right? We all just go up. Now if you're resting, you might have a low, like a drooping eye, right? So depending on what your expression is, match the angle. Is it extreme? Is it diagonal? Is it in motion? Just like the top brow, pull it down into the base. Pull it down into the base. Okay. There he is. So he's a little too sticky to keep going. I think it's very important that we sort of like start to develop like when I need to wait. Right, I've got most of the buildup. I'm going to add a little bit more material for his nostrils so he's got something to work with. But I need to let him set up, because if I try to do any more, I might ruin it, right? Sometimes we get to a point where you got to learn hands off. Because like, how many of you have ever overworked a piece? Probably all of us, right? We said, I got to just keep going. It's not done. And then you take it too far. Clay is about patience, right? If you learn anything this semester, it is patience. All right, so at this point, I want to wait for him to set up a little bit so that way I can go in with my carving tools and start to subtract, start to push in a smoother way. Now, if your clay is a little less sticky, you might have a little bit more leeway to keep going. But the one thing I'm going to do right now is a little bit of percussion with my finger to sort of get a nice compressed surface. Might go in with my thumbnail to sort of embellish that space. Make sure I have all the things that I'm supposed to have, right? Septum, philtrum, cheekies, mustache lines, all the important things. All right. And honestly, if this is what you gave me, I wouldn't be too mad, right? It's not bad. It's not bad. So I'm going to leave him sitting up this way so you can maybe come and look at him. I'm going to pause the video. Okay, now you. Now you. Now you.